My husband took a DNA test because our daughter has brown eyes. That's the sentence that keeps replaying in my head. Not because I cheated. Not because our marriage was falling apart. Not because there was some secret I've been hiding. Just eye color. I have blue eyes. He has blue eyes. Our daughter has brown. I never thought about it beyond that. I assumed there was a recessive gene somewhere, some forgotten grandparent trait that skipped generations. We've been together since college. He is the only man I have ever wanted a future with. We struggled through exams, bad apartments, cheap furniture, long nights studying and dreaming. We built everything together. When we decided to try for a baby, it wasn't impulsive, it wasn't accidental. We planned for her. We wanted her. I have never cheated on him. Not emotionally. Not physically. Not once. Before him, I'd been with 2 people. That was it. Once we were together, that chapter closed permanently. So when he started changing a few months ago, cheating wasn't even a thought in my mind. At first it was subtle. He'd stay in his office longer after work. He'd scroll on his phone and quickly lock it when I walked by. He started asking to see my phone. The first time I laughed, I thought he was joking, but he wasn't smiling. He said he just felt weird lately. That was all he gave me. No explanation. Just a feeling. I handed him my phone. I had nothing to hide. He went through messages, photos, emails, social media. He didn't find anything, because there was nothing to find, but he kept asking. Not daily. Just often enough that it stopped feeling casual and started feeling like surveillance. Eventually I told him I needed a reason. That if he was going to treat me like a suspect, I deserved to know the charge. That's when he got quiet. He didn't accuse me outright. He didn't say the word cheating, but he started looking at our daughter differently. She's 5. She has my nose and his laugh. She runs to him every evening when he comes home. She calls him her hero. And he started hesitating before hugging her. It was small, a half-second pause, a distracted look, but I noticed. He started spending more time online. I could hear typing late at night, not work typing, aggressive typing. One night I woke up at 2 a.m. and found him staring at his phone in the dark. When I asked what he was doing, he said he couldn't sleep. His eyes looked hollow. The morning he confronted me, he was calm. Too calm. He told me he had done a DNA test. I didn't even understand what he meant at first. He said he had sent in samples weeks ago, quietly, without telling me. My stomach dropped. He said the results came back negative. He said he wasn't her biological father. I laughed. It was automatic. A nervous reaction. I told him that was impossible. He didn't laugh back. He said he'd started questioning things when he learned 2 blue-eyed parents shouldn't have a brown-eyed child. He said he posted about it online. Asked for advice. Everyone said the same thing, he told me. Everyone. Strangers on the internet were apparently more convincing than his wife of 10 years. He said they told him not to confront me immediately. That if I was cheating, I'd try to hide evidence. He said he needed proof. He got 2 tests. Both came back negative. I felt like the room tilted. I told him tests can be wrong. That lab errors happen, that contamination happens. He said that's what guilty people say. That sentence hit harder than anything else. I asked him if he truly believed I could do that. Lie. Betray him. Raise another man's child in his house. He didn't answer. He said he wanted me to leave. Just like that? I refused. He locked himself in our bedroom. I slept in our daughter's room that night. She asked why I was there. I told her mommy just wanted extra cuddles. She fell asleep quickly. Children don't sense the tectonic plates shifting under their world. I didn't sleep at all. I replayed every moment of our relationship. Every hospital visit. Every doctor's appointment. Every memory. There was no one else. There never had been. The next morning he came out calmer. He said he still loved her. He said he wasn't sure about me. I told him we would do more tests. Blood tests. Independent labs. Whatever it took. He agreed. But he warned me that if they came back the same, he would go scorched earth. That phrase scared me more than the accusation. He hugged me when I asked. It felt like hugging someone standing at the edge of a cliff. I made a list of specialists, labs, genetic counselors. I needed science to save my marriage. But underneath the fear and the humiliation, another thought began to form. What if the test wasn't wrong? What if something else was? I don't know why that thought came to me. Maybe because deep down, the certainty in his voice didn't sound like jealousy. It sounded like confusion. And I realized something even more terrifying than being accused of cheating if he wasn't her father. Then what did that mean about the day she was born? And why did that memory suddenly feel fragile? The hospital, the nurses, the exhaustion, the chaos. I had never questioned it until now. We scheduled the blood tests. I told myself the results would clear everything up. That we would laugh about this one day. That the internet paranoia would fade. That our family would return to normal. But when I looked at my daughter that evening as she colored at the kitchen table, I felt something I had never felt before. Not doubt, not distance. Just fear. A quiet, creeping fear that this story was bigger than infidelity. Bigger than a broken marriage. Bigger than both of us, and that whatever the truth was, it was going to change everything. The blood tests were scheduled for the following week. I told myself that once we had results from a real lab, everything would settle, that science would override paranoia, that my husband would see how badly he'd hurt me and we'd begin repairing the damage. I needed to believe that, because the alternative didn't make sense. The days leading up to the appointment were unbearable. Every interaction between us felt rehearsed, like we were both afraid to say the wrong thing and shatter what little stability we had left. He was polite, distant, careful. I felt like I was living with a stranger who happened to know my routines. He barely touched our daughter. Not in a cruel way. Not intentionally. He still read her bedtime stories. Still made her breakfast. But there was a stiffness to it, like he was afraid of becoming attached to something that might be taken away. That broke me more than his suspicion of me ever could. The morning of the tests, I dressed our daughter in her favorite sweater. She asked why we were going to the doctor again. I told her it was just a checkup. She didn't question it. Children trust without effort. The lab was quiet, sterile, too bright. We sat in separate chairs while we waited. My husband stared at the floor. I stared at my hands. Neither of us spoke. When the nurse called our names, my heart started racing. Blood was drawn from all three of us. Our daughter winced, then forgot about it as soon as she was offered a sticker. I remember thinking how unfair it was that she had no idea this moment might define her entire life. We were told the results would take a few days. Those days stretched endlessly. I replayed the hospital in my mind over and over. The delivery room, the nurses, the moment they placed her on my chest. I remembered her weight, her warmth, the way she cried. Everything felt so vivid that the idea of a mistake felt impossible. And yet, doubt had already wormed its way in. When the call finally came, my husband answered it. I watched his face as he listened. I knew something was wrong before he said a word. The color drained from him. He ended the call without looking at me. "They want us to come in," he said. I asked why. He didn't answer. We drove to the lab in silence. I felt nauseous the entire way. I kept telling myself this was just protocol. That maybe the results were inconclusive. That maybe they needed retesting. When we sat down with the technician, she looked uncomfortable. She explained that the results confirmed what the home tests had shown. My husband was not biologically related to our daughter. I opened my mouth to speak, but she continued. "And there's something else." She looked at me. "The test also indicates that you are not biologically related to her either." For a moment, I didn't understand what she'd said. I thought maybe I misheard, maybe she misspoke. Maybe my brain refused to process it. I asked her to repeat herself. She did. "My daughter is not biologically mine." The room felt unreal, like the air had thickened. Like I was watching this happen to someone else. I started laughing. Not because it was funny, because it was absurd. Because my brain was trying to protect me from collapsing. The technician explained possibilities. Lab errors, sample contamination, rare conditions, hospital mix-ups, hospital mix-up. That phrase echoed in my head. We were escorted out and told someone would be contacting us. I don't remember leaving the building. I don't remember driving home. At some point, a police officer came to our house. They asked us questions about the hospital where I gave birth. About timelines, about paperwork, about wristbands. About whether we ever suspected anything was wrong. I kept answering mechanically, like I was reading from a script. My husband sat beside me, pale and silent. After the officer left, neither of us moved. I felt like my entire identity had been yanked out from under me. I wasn't a cheating wife. I wasn't even a confused one. I was a mother who might not be her child's biological parent. I went into my daughter's room and watched her sleep. I memorized her face, the way her hair curled near her ears, the way she breathed. I loved her. Nothing about that had changed. But now there was a new terror layered on top of everything else. What if someone comes for her? What if they decide she belongs somewhere else? What if there is another family out there looking for their baby and that baby is mine? My husband finally spoke that night. "I'm sorry," he said. Not defensively. Not cautiously. Just broken? He told me how deep he'd gone online. How forums and strangers had convinced him that betrayal was inevitable. That he'd convinced himself I was lying because that explanation hurt less than admitting reality didn't make sense. He told me he'd been terrified of losing everything, of being made a fool, of being alone. I listened, but I didn't know how to respond. Because while his apology mattered, the damage was already done. Our marriage survived the accusation. But now we were facing something far bigger. We were no longer just a couple in crisis. We were parents caught in a nightmare we didn't choose. And somewhere out there might be another child who belonged to me. And another family who might be missing her. The days after the police visit blurred together. Our house felt smaller, quieter, like the walls were listening. Every sound my daughter made felt amplified. Her laughter, her footsteps, the way she hummed to herself while drawing. Each one reminded me that this child, regardless of biology, was mine in every way that mattered. But biology suddenly mattered to everyone else. We were contacted by lawyers, by hospital representatives, by people who spoke in rehearsed tones and careful language. They told us investigations were underway, that mistakes like this were rare but not impossible, that records would be reviewed, that other families might be contacted. Other families. I couldn't stop thinking about them. Somewhere out there, Another woman might be tucking in a child that wasn't hers. Another mother might be loving my biological daughter without knowing it. The thought made me sick. At night, my husband and I lay awake on opposite sides of the bed. Not because we were angry at each other anymore, but because we didn't know how to exist in this new reality. We talked in whispers, about custody, about worst-case scenarios, about what would happen if someone showed up at our door with a court order, about what we would do if we ever met the other family. Would we hate them? Would we feel relief? Would we feel jealous? Neither of us knew. My husband withdrew again, but this time it wasn't suspicion. It was guilt. One night, he broke down. He told me about the months leading up to the DNA test, about how isolated he'd felt, how the pandemic had destroyed his sense of self, how he'd gained weight, lost confidence, stopped recognizing the man in the mirror, how online communities had fed his fear and validated his worst thoughts. He told me he had convinced himself I would leave him, that I deserved better, that cheating felt inevitable. And when the test came back negative, he said his mind snapped into survival mode. I thought I was protecting myself, he said. I thought I was bracing for impact. He admitted that, in hindsight, the idea that I'd cheated didn't even align with who I was. But fear had made him irrational, and the internet had given that fear a voice. He told me he would spend the rest of his life regretting how he treated me. I told him something that surprised both of us. I forgive you, I said, but I don't know how to forget, and that was the truth. We decided together that we would not tell our daughter yet. She was too young, too innocent. We couldn't risk her repeating something at school, having her identity turned into gossip. She deserved stability while we figured out what stability even looked like anymore. But keeping the secret was its own kind of torture. Every time she called me Mom, I felt both overwhelming love and a sharp, irrational fear that someone would try to take that word away from me. My husband started therapy. Individual sessions at first, then couples counseling. We needed help navigating a reality no one prepares you for. At one point he asked if we should try for another child. I said no. Not because I didn't want another baby, but because I knew he wasn't asking from a place of hope. He was asking from loss, from wanting to replace something that felt broken. We needed to heal, not overwrite. Months passed. The investigation dragged on. There were delays, missing records, administrative errors. Every update felt like reopening a wound. Eventually we learned that another family had been identified. I won't share their details. That part isn't mine to tell. What I will say is this: there is no handbook for meeting someone who might be raising your biological child. There is no correct reaction, no clean resolution. Some people imagine dramatic reunions, tears, embraces, easy answers. Reality is quieter, awkward, fragile. We didn't rush into anything. We took things slowly, carefully, with lawyers present, with therapists involved, with everyone trying not to make the wrong move. And through it all, my daughter remained my daughter. Not because of DNA, but because of bedtime stories, scraped knees, school projects, the sound of her voice calling for me in the middle of the night. Love doesn't evaporate when biology gets complicated. But trust is harder. My husband eventually wrote his own post online, explaining his side, owning his mistakes, acknowledging how fear and misinformation had poisoned his judgment. Some people forgave him. Some didn't, and honestly, I understood both. Because the truth is, even though our marriage survived, it was changed forever. We didn't go back to normal. We built something new on top of the ruins of what we thought was certain. I don't know what the future holds. I don't know how or when we'll tell our daughter. I don't know what relationship we'll have with the other family, or if there even will be one. What I do know is this: a DNA test didn't reveal an affair. It revealed how fragile certainty really is, how easily fear can rewrite reality, and how loving someone isn't always enough to protect them from being hurt. If I've learned anything from all of this, it's that family isn't defined by blood alone, but blood has a way of complicating everything it touches. And once you start questioning what you thought was unshakable, there's no way to unsee it.